If you ever look up governing body Rolex on Google, you'll get results like these. Stephen Lett's 27876.00 Submariner Rolex and his Masonic
Jehovah's Witness
ring
governing
right
body
there.
member Samuel Hurd wear a Rolex watch more than...
Is Stephen Lett wearing a
23.0000?
Rolex 2020 convention?
I do not need anyone's propaganda. I have eyes to see Rolex watches, golden rings, expensive clothes, also to mention the promotion of deadly vaccine.
Okay. So, turns out people have already spent a lot of their time tracking down, identifying, and posting the governing body's Rolex collection. So, there's nothing to see here, right? They do wear Rolex watches. I mean, look at the pic. Except, that's not a Rolex. None of them are. If you listen to my podcast, you may have picked up that I like fashion. I'm finding fashion to be a great way of self-expression, and now that I don't have to wear clothes appropriate for 1950, I'm experimenting with a wider array of clothes and fits and silhouettes. But before I had that, I had watches. Watches are often overlooked by most people, so they were a great bet for self-expression for me because no elders were going to care about a watch as much. Now, I have never been able to afford any kind of luxury watch, but man, I learned about them as if I was. I learned the basics of horology, I learned all about mechanical and automatic movements, all about straps and brands, and inevitably about Rolex. Now, Rolex has come out with very nice and streamlined designs, and it has come out with flashier, more expensive looking designs. So let's focus on the one Stephen Lett apparently owns. This is a gold Rolex Submariner with a blue dial. The watch is pretty affordable, barely over $50,000, so let's focus on the unique design to make sure we know how to spot one when we're out shopping. We can see the blue ceramic bezel, the round, square, and triangular hour markers, the date window, the overall shape of the watch and how it links to the bracelet. All of these tiny details are what makes a Rolex a Rolex. A very distinguished design that you can only get when paying a premium, because copying the design and just putting your name on top would be pretty much stealing. It would be illegal. It has to be illegal. Otherwise, how could Rolex charge so much for... Wait, go back one. Yeah, how is that one so cheap? Wait, why does it say Invicta? Why is this happening? So it turns out you can totally copy the design of a Rolex and just replace it with your brand. These are called homage watches. As long as you call it a homage and you don't use the Rolex logo or name, you're good. In fact, homages are basically the main source of memes in the horology community, and they can get pretty close too. Look at this. This is from a comparison video between a Rolex and its $70 Invicta homage. I professionally altered this image to hide the text and brand from both watches. You just looked at a bunch of Rolexes. Can you tell which is which? I'll give you a moment. There, it's this one. Did you get it right? I was joking, it's this one. Really, it is this one. I'll leave the video in the description. But it's harder than it looks, especially because Invicta is one of hundreds, probably thousands of brands, all coming up with their own version of Rolex lookalikes. Seriously, let's play Is This a Rolex, where there are no prizes, but you'll still get to feel disappointed when you lose? Harder than it sounds, right? Now let's bring back those images again and try to ID the watches in them. Yeah, so it's definitely impossible. You can't even see the dial in most of these, let alone whether they say Rolex or not. And some of these images are just plain wrong too. This isn't the color of the dial of that Rolex, this is the color of this Invicta watch. Now, am I saying that this is an Invicta watch 100%? No, because I know that it is impossible to tell what you're looking at when you're looking at a 4-pixeled watch. That's why I open by saying none of these are Rolexes, because I know for a fact no one can prove me wrong. I've seen every single broadcast and I've spent a ridiculous amount of time looking at their wrist and trying to figure out which watch they're wearing, and guess what? They've never shown a clear shot of one. That's why saying governing body members wear Rolexes is a terrible argument, because it's exactly the argument Jehovah's Witnesses expect apostates to make. As a Jehovah's Witness, I would have probably felt super inclined to reinforce my beliefs and respond something like, read the question and thought, what? Then realize other religious leaders do this. No, the governing body member are the same as everyone else. They don't sit in special seats, they don't lord it over the congregation, and they don't wear special rings or fleece the flock or any other ridiculous accusation from nasty-minded gossipers. They help clean alongside their brothers too. Citation needed. Happy to do menial tasks. Citation needed. They are just men who are trying the best for us. And at this point, people are quick to say, well, but they shouldn't be wearing gold watches to begin with, but that's just moving the goalpost. Plus, don't you know that between Jehovah's Witnesses' practice of policing each other and the few outfit choices you have, the only thing people are allowed to compliment a brother on is on their tie or on their watch? Seriously, these people are praised and showered with adoration everywhere they go. Don't you think someone would inevitably end up complimenting their watches and asking what brand they wear? What's Tony Moore supposed to do when a Bethelite or a rank and file asks? Hide it? But for a second, let's assume I'm wrong. Let's assume these watches, all of them, are the Rolexes people say they are. Not that one has the wrong dial, but the rest of them. Would that really be proof of anything? They could have been passed along by someone. They could have been a gift from a wealthy Jehovah's Witness. Seriously, for all we know, these could have been part of one of those inheritances the Watchtower gets, and they decided to use one before selling it to dress up the governing body. It doesn't matter. These guys are misleading 8 million people. They're oppressing people, perpetuating extremely damaging doctrine that can kill people, hoarding a giant database of sex abusers that gets bigger by the second. Talking about Rolexes is the equivalent of trying to change a QAnon supporter's mind by telling them, oh, you'll never look at Trump the same once you know that he may have littered once. It's never going to work. So, why do we care so much? I don't know exactly, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's because them owning Rolexes and being secretly wealthy would make them simpler. It would give us, as XJW, someone to blame for all the suffering we've endured. These people are evil, these people lied to me, and they knew all along. But people aren't either all good or all bad. Seeing things in this black and white filter is exactly how they get away with saying all apostates are evil and mentally diseased. We want to think of these people as fully evil. We want to think of them as villains plotting how to hurt Jehovah's Witnesses and ex-Jehovah's Witnesses next. We want to reduce them to cartoons, hoping they're drunk just to laugh at them. We don't want to think of Tony Moore as being an old man, potentially dealing with the horrors of the disease that alcohol addiction can be in an environment where ignoring it is pretty much the only way to move forward. He's drunk Tony. He puts whiskey in his cornflakes.
More than likely, if you ask me, because there was some whiskey in his cornflakes.
It's almost like we want to think of them the same way as we thought of apostates like us when we were indoctrinated. But the disappointing reality is that the governing body members are nothing but polite and modest old men who are most likely victims of the same indoctrination that victimized us. And seeing it like that doesn't make what they do less evil. It doesn't excuse the horrific things they've done. It just makes them human. As Jehovah's Witnesses, we're instructed to think of people as being either good or evil, either right or wrong. It is up to us to move on and recognize that the governing body members are normal people doing evil things. So, do they wear Rolexes? We don't know. Probably not. Does it matter? Definitely not. Can you help me afford a Rolex? Oh man, am I doing this? Am I seriously planning on transitioning to... I just opened a Patreon account! It turns out editing takes a lot of time when you're an idiot. That Evil Slave video, that's like 100 hours worth of writing, researching, editing and whatnot. So I set up a Patreon account where you can get more involved in the creation process. You can get access to rough cuts and early videos, maybe even get your own cartoon version of yourself to wave everyone at the end of the video. I don't know. You can also support me by doing the likes and subscribes and by listening to my podcast with my co-hosts My Little Pimo and Dax, who I believe were recently nominated as Best People Ever. That's everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.